Hey, tonight we're going to talk to one of my good friends, Brooks Hood, from the America. And yeah, we're just going to talk about shit and see where it goes. Hey,
Hey,
welcome.
thank you. Fun to be here.
Yeah. Now, I was thinking about this before you came, what I want to know, and something that I don't know is how is it to grow up as a kid in the States? Because I know how it's like to grow up as a kid in Iceland.
Right.
And when I traveled to LA with my kids, then that was the first time that I realized that not the same rules applied.
Right.
And because basically in Iceland, your kids just go out and play. And if they're outside playing, everybody's happy.
Right.
And today's America seems not to be that way.
More so than it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's changed.
Yeah. How so?
Well, more so than what you have in Iceland, everything is more conservative, more protective. When you take into consideration, everybody makes jokes about it. You got the milk cartons with pictures of kids, and you go into Walmart and there's a wall full of missing kids, but that's reality. I mean, even so, I grew up in not a large city, but in that sense, the population was more than Iceland, but still about, we were probably getting close to, with the whole metropolitan area, probably around 500,000 people. But even so, when I was a kid, you weren't that concerned, but I'd ride my bike to the grocery store, which was probably about 1.5 kilometers away.
Yeah.
And I'd go to other stores for Mom on my bike, and I'm at that point, 6, 7 years old.
Yeah.
You don't do that anymore in the town I grew up in.
Okay.
There was a mall very close to our home, and it was funny, I was there just the other day when my mother passed away, and I decided, since we were an hour's drive away, to take my kids and let them see where I was born and raised. It was weird to drive past the mall. It's completely, part of it's been changed into a fire station.
Yeah.
And another part's been changed into a police station, but the rest of it's just boarded up. And in fact, I saw some pictures the other day in a group that I'm in on Facebook, and it's, it leaks. It's just, it's like a giant mall, but there's no use for it. But it was closed because, I guess I remember 10 or 15 years ago having gone back, and friends of mine told me, you don't go there after nightfall. And I was like, why? Because shootings, gang stuff, and you got to understand, where I grew up is where our house was basically out in the sticks when I was a kid.
Okay.
And now that's not. But as is the case with so many American cities, they generally start somewhere and then they start developing to one direction. The biggest cities go in all directions, but the medium and small size stuff, they usually go, ours grew to the east.
Yeah.
And the west side of town was always, the poor side of town, that was always dangerous. You didn't go there if you didn't have to.
The sketchy side of town.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's the same way in all the big cities in the States, closest large or metropolitan city, huge, to my house was Atlanta, Georgia. And everybody knew you didn't go to the south side of town. I mean, the projects, housing for, poorer people, and just all of your crazy stuff was there. But I think the big difference, and it was a huge change for me to move here, was, like you said at the beginning, you just basically let your kids go here and you don't really think about it. I mean, it's an island, they're not going anywhere, not far. Of course, I've heard of the ones that have disappeared, which is really interesting here, but that kind of thing.
I've always wondered about that also, just because of sheer numbers. Do we have less or more, or is it relatively the same? if you know what I mean, because numbers really screw you up. And also when you have, like you were talking about, the milk cartons and
Yeah.
and then it's just a constant reminder of that things can happen.
Right.
But if we would have the same situation in Iceland where we would have that,
Yeah, it would
it
be.
would look a lot bigger of a problem than it really is.
Right, right. Well, and that's the same thing I think for everybody. You know, we're talking more or less around crime.
Yeah.
You get desensitized to it when you live where it happens all the time. Here, you know, even when I moved to Iceland, for the longest time, and obviously I'm on the east of the country, which is not the same as Reykjavik, but I even know people in Reykjavik who used to be this way. People didn't lock their houses.
Hmm.
And you know, when I was a kid,
I might be one of those people.
well, when I was a kid, you know, we talk about, you know, kids that have keys, or turnkey kids is what the latchkey kids is the expression in English. And I can remember when I started first grade, I had a key.
Hmm.
And if you lost that, you know,
Yeah.
you're fucked.
It's the same. It was the same in my house, and I was a kid who constantly lost his keys.
Right.
So I spent many afternoons at my friend's house, or just waiting for my parents to come home.
Right. I
Because-
can remember the carport.
Yep.
Because I forgot it inside. And it was like, somebody will be home sooner or later.
Yeah.
Later you figured out a way to break in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a problem with that when I was a teenager. We moved to what do you call it?
An apartment complex.
Yeah. And we were on the third floor.
Yeah.
And first months they had a very bad locking downstairs, so I could get around that, and then I could get in. But when they fixed that, I had problems.
Right.
And I sometimes think about this, because now if my kids get locked out, I'm getting a phone call within a minute,
Right.
and I'm expected to come home and open the door.
Right now. Yeah, we didn't have phones when
Nope.
I was a kid. I mean, not cell phones or anything like that.
Yeah.
But that's
And also just the attitude was different. They were at work.
right.
If I would have gone to my friend's house and called them up, they would say, I'm working, tough luck.
Right. Right.
But that's not the same today.
No. That's totally different.
Yeah.
And I think, like we were talking about with the crime and stuff, you were asking the difference. You know, we lived on a fairly busy street, so I got to see all kinds of crazy stuff from the standpoint of, one thing that I remember was there was an empty lot beside our property, and that was a street corner. And I will forget one morning, I'm going to say it was a Sunday morning, I don't remember, but it was probably a Sunday morning. And woke up, and when I went outside, before we were probably getting ready to go to church or something like that, there's a car that is standing up by the light pole. And then it crashed. You look at that and you're like, yeah, okay. I don't know how you pulled that off. But you see lots of things that are unusual to see here. So it's a big change in that regard. For example, 2 houses away from ours, there was a teenager who was killed at the front door of the house. He was more than likely high or something, and went to the house, wanted to see one of this guy's daughters in the middle of the night, and just wouldn't stop beating on the door. And you know, it's America, and people are gun crazy, and he got shot and killed by the...
Yeah, I think that's a big difference also, the gun thing.
True.
We have a lot of guns here, but that's hunting rifles and shotguns.
Right.
So when you look at the numbers, we're pretty
Yeah.
We're pretty big on being gun owners, but these are all hunting supplies, and nobody has them at their house.
Well,
se.
yeah, and that's the other big difference there is, since Iceland is such a peaceful country and has never had to engage in honest to goodness war or anything like that, it's just a different environment.
It definitely is, and that on my travels to different cities, talking to people, that is the big difference. I feel just in like young guys on my age, when I'm talking to them, going to be part of the army is a big thing of their lives. They have to go at some point. Like I went to Turkey, been to America, and
Well, it's not required in the States.
no, it's not required, but
You're required to register.
yeah,
Right.
but a lot of people see it as an opportunity to get education and stuff like that.
Right.
So if you're born into a poor family, for instance, that's a big motivation
Yeah.
to go and get some. And also, one friend of mine got sentenced to go. He could choose whether you're going to jail or you're going to
Right.
the army, and he
Right.
chose the latter.
Well, and it is a great opportunity for a lot of people, especially if they come up from an underprivileged situation or a just bad environment.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things that's very different about here is the discipline and the order.
Yep. We're not big on that.
No, not very. But there's positives and negatives to both.
Yeah.
It's, that's one of the things that I think may hold like Americans down in their thinking, because they don't, it's basically like the old story about the elephant and the rope. You tied up as a little baby and it's like, oh, I'm still tied up, that held me, and I'm not going to try it,
Yeah.
And that's kind of a sad thing, because some people, and even a lot of my friends, I realized they didn't, it's not unusual for people to be born someplace, live there all their life, and not really go very much else.
Yeah.
And, try that with Icelanders. Have to stay here?
We need sunshine. We need to go somewhere else to get that stuff.
Yeah, but it's also that same thing that, a big country looks inside itself.
Yeah.
And a little country
Definitely.
looks...
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think it rings a bell when you talk about this structured thing, because we have a lot of creative people in Iceland, a lot of musicians, a lot of creative thinkers, and I think that has a lot to do with the lack of discipline.
Okay, I'd never thought about it that way. I was looking at it more from the standpoint of, when there's less than 6 hours of daylight, you have to develop your imagination, otherwise you're going to go nuts. But
Yeah, could be that also. I have this is bro science in my mind right now.
Sort of, but the other thing that Iceland, as well as Europe, has going for it is education is a lot better.
Yeah.
Plus literacy, even though I know the government gets losing their mind about, kids not being able to read and whatnot. But the fact that people are literate, and in fact, the fact that you can read your language from 1,000 years ago, throw Old English in front of an American. I've done it, I can read it, I understand it.
Yeah.
They don't get it.
Okay.
A large majority of people in the States don't understand British people speaking, So.
I kind of get that though.
Well, I get that too. Two countries separated by a language, and that's kind of funny, but.
Especially when you talk about like Scottish. I have a Scottish friend, and when he starts speaking fast, I just lose all.
Or Welsh.
Yeah.
And I saw the strangest thing on my vacation the other day, and it's just, you could say it's a culture shock, but when we were on vacation, we went to a beauty salon for my wife to get her nails and stuff done. And there was a hairdresser there, and he was Irish, and he was gay. And I said, I've never heard a gay Irish person. I didn't think that could exist, because the language sounds so, And it was just like, okay, that does exist. So, more my problem than anybody else's. It's very interesting.
Yeah. And you grew up there, and did you always see yourself going somewhere else? Was it always kind of?
No, I can't say that. It was a big thing when you're from a small town, and you got to remember 500,000 people is small in the States. When you're from that kind of a place, it was actually strange to be back there this past year, because it always seemed bigger when I was a kid. And it seemed really small now. I was like, we drove through the entire thing, and I showed my kids, and I was like, okay, that took 15 minutes. But it's a big deal when you're from that kind of a place to be like, okay, I'm going to get out of here. I got to go somewhere else. This is driving me nuts. This is boring. This is crazy. This is too small. Everybody knows everybody. And I didn't make any plan to do that. It sort of ended up happening, but I was always, in many ways, more of a free spirit than a lot of my school friends and other, more people were that conservative thing that,
Just content with what they had going.
Well, either that or, it's like people who live in North America for whatever reason, probably because it's just the size that it is. I had a funny situation the other year with a company I deal with in Canada, and I was talking to the daughter of the owner, and I said, I kind of need to get stuff I'm ordering in a hurry. How fast do you think you can get it? And I heard when she put the phone down, and she said, how long does the truck take to get to Iceland? I was like, I want to see that truck. But
I want one of those.
right, and people don't realize, it's not uncommon for people in the States to never leave, their state that they're born and raised in. And to see more of the United States, that's one thing, but, it's like even with my parents.
Yeah.
It's a much longer trip to Iceland than it is from Iceland to the States.
It's the same when you live outside of Reykjavik in Iceland.
Right.
It's the same situation.
Right.
But that kind of surprised me when I started traveling more, like going, I've been a couple of times to the States and talked to people there that it's a status thing to have gone abroad. It's a huge one.
Yes.
And I kind of learned this through that, because then I realized, okay, this is not typical. No. Because this is a status thing, because nobody in Iceland would ever brag about, I've been going there and there and there, because it's kind of
commonplace,
the norm.
Right. Right.
But it's funny when these little differences when you go some places that you kind of get the sense, okay, this is not normal for everybody.
Yeah. Well, and it creates, I don't want to say problems, but it creates sort of inconveniences for people. A lot of my friends from high school and whatever, we're friends on Facebook and whatever, but they'll make jokes at me and say, oh, you finally posted something in English, which it's not intentional, it's just the way it is. But I think part of that probably comes down to, in some ways, probably just jealousy, because they haven't seen anything else.
Yeah.
And it's a big thing that a lot of people in the States, I think, would need. They need to see how the rest of the world is. They need to know it's not like...
Yeah, I think it's necessary for everyone.
Oh yeah, of course.
All over, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And so how did this turn out that you decided to move to Iceland of all fucking places? That kind of amazes me.
Yeah, you're not the only one.
No?
My first wife, we met when I lived in Florida. I had moved from Florida in 1990 and was running 2 photo finishing labs and a studio in Fort Lauderdale. And she was at the Art Institute in Fort Lauderdale learning photography.
Okay.
The typical Icelandic travel abroad and learn thing. Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, Iceland was not unknown to me at that point. My father came here in 1970-something, 76, I don't remember, for a bid for one of the hydroelectric plants that was done. I don't remember which one. I'd have to ask him. But we had in our living room 2 drawings from Thingvellir.
Okay.
And one of them was, the house there and everything, the cradle of democracy in the world and all that. And we had a piece of lava from Hekla. Okay. And a book by, in English it's called Fahrenheit, which is Eldernese, but I'm trying to remember the guy's name. It's a photographer. I think it might be Barði. I don't remember, but doesn't matter. I knew that the place existed and all that. And she came in to the shop that I was running looking for a job. She wanted to learn how to do photo finishing because her plan was to move home back where we lived on the east of the country and open a studio and photo finishing deal.
Okay.
So she ended up, unlike a lot of people who tried to get work with me, she seemed promising and diligent, which are very good qualities in employees. So I ended up giving her a job, and she learned how to do that, and one thing led to another.
What were you exactly doing that there?
I was running those two stores. I had the owner of the two stores was a Canadian fellow who, I don't know how long he'd been in the States, but I ran one store that was down by the harbor in Fort Lauderdale.
Yep.
And we did photo finishing for basically tour companies and yacht owners and yacht companies, which Fort Lauderdale is one of the biggest, sort of capitals of that type of thing.
Yacht communities.
Yeah, huge. You'd be surprised. And we also had lots of Scandinavian tourists and other European tour companies that we had been servicing for years before I took over.
Okay.
So she learned the business, and then we obviously ended up in a relationship. And I had said to her that it'd be neat if she wanted to stay in the States, that we could, see how things would work out. But she was determined that she needed to come back here to take care of her father. And after that, when she left, I was like, if you've never been to South Florida, it's a little bit weird, especially for somebody who grew up in the South. We're much more friendly,
I've heard a lot of talk about this, that Florida is a weird...
South Florida.
Yeah.
Central Florida, Orlando, by the time you get past, West Palm and everything, it starts getting better every mile you go.
Yeah.
But South Florida it's a unique place. At that point, my father was living in Chicago, and I never will forget the first time I went to Chicago, how friendly I thought people were. You walk into a store in South Florida, nobody's going to say anything to you. I walked into a shop across from his apartment building after I had just flown in. The guy said, "How you doing?" I was like, "Are you talking to me?" Nobody, I mean, literally. And South Florida has always been a little bit wacko. Like, one of the things when I was living there, if you got pulled over for a speeding ticket, not that I would ever do that, but if you got pulled over, the first police vehicle that stopped you would call to you on their, loudspeaker to wait in the car, because they had to get a second vehicle to be with you, to be with them, before they would come and cite you your ticket. They had lots of people who were, that Peruvian parade powder was causing problems, and cops would get shot in the face, or just, somebody would pull over and he's got, something in the car. And about the time that I lived there, we also had, you probably don't remember that, but there were whack jobs. You can see on the cars by the license plate, you could tell it was a rental. They weren't marked, but you could tell by the way the number was. And there were guys who were going out on the interstates there and shooting at the cars and shooting at people. Oh yeah.
Okay.
And this was obviously people who were tourists there on vacation, trying to get that sunshine you were talking about. And we also had another fun, weird thing that was going on there, which was there were people who were posing as delivery people for like UPS and whatever, and doing home invasions, robbing you or worse.
Mm-hmm.
So after I had been there for a while, on top of the fact that it's probably the dirtiest water that you can ever find anywhere on the planet, literally it's yellow, I was kind of like, okay, she's going to go back to Iceland. And I said, I'm 24 or 23. Why not? Had no idea what I was doing. So.
Far from Reykjavik. This is Höfn í Hornafirði.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
It's there. It's what, 4-hour drive from Reykjavik?
If you're lucky. If you drive the speed limit, it's going to take you 6.
6.
It's 460 kilometers.
Yeah. Yeah, which doesn't seem like a lot when you live in the States, but on Iceland,
It's hell.
yeah, it's pretty much
Yeah.
almost half of the country
Right.
around of
Right.
the island.
Right. And it was.
And how was it coming into a small situation like living there? How many people live there? 400 or 500?
No. The
More.
entire community is, and I'm talking the smaller communities that are close by.
Yeah.
It gets to almost 2,000.
Yeah, okay, it's that much.
Yeah, but the city itself is probably about 1,400 maybe.
Isn't that big? Okay.
Yeah. It's bigger than you think. It's
Yeah.
one of the few that hasn't, I mean, it's changed, but it was a much more,
They have fishing going on there.
yeah, they have the herring and
Yeah.
as well the lobster.
Yeah.
Or actually, that's not lobster in English, whatever it is. What is it?
I have no idea.
There's a languines, languines, something like that. I think that's what the name is.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's
But,
always called hummer or lobster the same, but
Right, but yeah, they've got that. Always had that for quite some time, and that and the other thing that keeps them alive is the. I don't remember that one. Silt. No, not silt. I'm talking about the little guys. What are they?
herring.
No,
No.
herring's big. What are the lona?
Yeah.
But I don't remember what that is.
I
We'll figure that
I
out.
could never translate Icelandic fish name to English because that's something I have never had to use anywhere.
Right. But that's the big thing there, just
Yeah.
like in invest money. So, what was it like to get into that? It was actually fun at first. It was interesting until I got far enough along with Icelandic, and then you start to realize that in this little community, once you started to get a sort of a scorecard of who used to be married and how that had all gone, and then you realized that nothing happens without everybody knowing.
Yep.
And I mean literally. And things that don't happen,
Mm-hmm.
and they get, you know,
Yeah.
it happened on more than one occasion that somebody either came up to me or my wife and said, one time they congratulated my wife for the new house that we bought, which we didn't know about, but that was the story. But it was neat because growing up in the States, everything's sort of disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
You know your neighbor. My best friend when I was a kid lived next door, but I didn't know the people on the other side of the street. I sort of knew the people to one side and behind us, but not more than, you know, we might say hi if we saw each other, but, you know, you weren't going over for coffee or something like that.
No.
When you're in a little community like this, you know, and I miss that sometimes here in Reykjavik because we're talking about kids and stuff. That's not just some kid.
No.
It's their kid.
Yep.
And you don't, you know,
Yeah.
you don't treat them bad.
No.
And you talk to them if something's going on, and it makes it a, you know, it's like a big family,
Yeah.
which is neat
It's neat in a way.
in a
It
way,
has its pluses and its negatives.
big time. And those get revealed in a fairly quick hurry once you understand what's going on, because some people can be, you know, ostracized because, oh, your family is like this,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, or, you know, you're not from the right group of whatever.
Yeah. But in the same sense, though, you kind of have to get along because you're so few.
Yeah, you have to
And
find a way.
that makes you a little bit mature, I think, because you can have run-ins, but you just have to get over that shit. We ain't that many. We're gonna see each other.
Right. Or one of the things that I found amazing and enjoyed was there were quite a few disabled children in the community while I lived there, and they were never put out of the group.
Mhm.
You know, you saw that when I grew up.
Yeah.
You saw differences between people, and you saw, as is common here, you know, people who are adopted from other countries. And I think that's one of the things that I find amazing here, because, you know, growing up in the States, you see segregation, you see racism, you see things in your face, and obviously it's not like it doesn't exist here.
It's
but
on a different level.
it's at a different,
It doesn't run deep, and
Right.
it usually doesn't go into hatred or stuff like that.
right.
It's just
It
shallow.
can, but it's not nearly as as
Yeah.
blatant as what goes on in the States.
Nice, friendly racism.
Right. Right. Exactly. That's a very good way to say it.
Yeah. And you lived there for how many years?
Almost 12.
Almost 12.
Yeah,
Okay.
92 until 2003.
That's a long time.
'Tis indeed.
And what did you do there? Yeah, I know you taught music.
It's basically shortly after I got there, there was not much work for me to do there. My wife had gotten me in on she imported me, as we say, so that I could take care of her machinery and whatnot for her photo studio.
Yeah.
And probably I arrived here the 1st of March, 92, and I think it's like June or July when we bought, there was another man who had opened a photo finishing company there, but he was the printer in town, but he didn't know how all this stuff worked, and he was basically getting frustrated with it. It was costing him too much money. He wasn't making any money off of it. So we went to the bank, and we ended up taking a loan and bought his machines and his company basically from him, and started doing that. And that was what we did from 92 until 99 or 2000, and then there was a big change. We were using the oldest type of developing materials, paper and chemical and whatnot, and the production of that stopped. And in order for us to move forward, we would have to have bought new machines, which we couldn't afford, and then the market wouldn't deal with it. So we shut the photo finishing side down. The studio continued. I went to work for the radar agency here out at Stoksnes. Did that work there twice while I lived there. But at 2 different points, I did work teaching music, and as well I worked at one point as an extra, sort of a side job at the hotel in the community. Other than that, I was doing my normal thing, music, was in a couple of bands, and I was replacement for, I think, 2 or 3 bands at different points if they needed their guitar player to take a vacation or whatever. Then I was the guy that was there, and as well I had a sound reinforcement company.
Sound?
Sound reinforcement.
Okay.
So.
I have no idea what that is.
Yeah. Hljóðkerfi. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. But I did that because the only reason I got into that was because we needed it in the community. We were always having, social functions and whatnot that needed that.
Yeah.
And they figured out fairly quickly that I knew how to do that, and for whatever reason, I don't know, I always was the person that was doing it. So
that's how it works in the small communities also.
Yeah.
If you know something, they're going to find a use for it.
They found a use for it. That's right. So.
Yeah. And then it was a big change when you moved to Reykjavik.
Yeah, I had to bounce from the States, which was interesting, weird. I couldn't move directly here. But yeah, it was a huge change.
You had to.
Yeah, we moved from up to the States in 2003.
Yeah, okay.
And then I moved back 2006.
Okay, so you had 3 years.
Yeah,
in the
almost.
States.
Yeah, almost. Which was very weird, because you were talking about growing up in the States. We moved with our 3 kids, and we were talking about the kids on the wall at Walmart and the milk cartons.
Yeah.
My children are very open and sort of free in that sense. And I never will forget, they were exactly at Walmart one time when my wife went with the 3 of them. I was probably at work. And all of a sudden she's at the cash register and she can't find our youngest, who at this point is 3 or 4. She doesn't know what's going on. She just can't find him. But he's a real smart kid. And all of a sudden she's freaking out because she just can't find him. So in the States, if you let the staff of a store know, they shut the entire place. They lock the doors.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And she was freaking out and didn't know where he was. And so it turns out he's a smart kid. He'd been in the store before. He knew where the bathroom was. He went to the bathroom. He just came back. Oh, I had to go to the bathroom. And it was very unusual even for me, because having been here for, at that point, my twins were 6 years old, and Robert's 3. And I'd been used to, you let them sleep outside here, you do whatever. You open the door, say go out and play, whatever.
Especially in Hopnahurst.
Oh, of course. And, living in Atlanta.
Not so much.
No.
Yeah.
So that was a big change. But yeah, moving to Reykjavik was a huge change.
Yeah?
Yeah. Big, big, big.
In what way? Because I kind of, when I was growing up, I kind of got both worlds. At summertime, I always went to the country to work on my family's farm.
Right.
Just from being, I think, 11 years old.
Yeah.
So I always spent my summers there.
Right.
And so I kind of got to know how that stuff works too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very different to Reykjavik. But like for you, just who have been there all this time and moving to Reykjavik, how did you sense change? How did you think it was different, and what worked differently? And
Well, lots of ways. People become actually, I think, more important to you when you live in a little small community like that, because they're really, well, while I lived there, we got a movie theater.
mm-hmm.
Other than that, there was, the only things that there were to do were, occasionally there was a dance.
Mm-hmm.
There were a couple bars.
Mm-hmm.
You could get into acting and be in the, that type
Community
of thing.
theater thing?
Because I knew how to play an instrument, I was taken into the brass band, forced to do that because, hey, you do this? Okay, you're in. There wasn't a
no questions
there was
asked.
no entrance test. No, you're in. And it's totally different. When you get to Reykjavik, on the other hand, you have all these temptations. You can go bowling, you can go to the movies, you can go to the mall. We had maybe, I'm going to say 10, 15 retail stores, and most of those were just little tiny things nothing. So you get here, plus the fact of having all these people, it's just a lot more stress. It's a much more relaxed,
Mm-hmm.
situation there.
Life just moves slower.
Yeah. And there are times when I miss it.
Yeah?
Outside of the fact that, where I grew up is not probably, it's not the ugliest place in the world, but it's not anything, dramatic or whatever. Mm-hmm. There's special places to see and whatnot. But that's one of the most beautiful places I've seen in this island. And it's fairly amazing. I'll never forget, I used to live below an amazing mountain, and that was what I saw out of my kitchen window to eat breakfast. You could, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
And plenty of things there that are, just amazing. And you ended up, that was part of the life there was, Sunday was maybe, hey, let's go for a drive.
Yeah, just go check out nature.
Right.
Yeah.
Or something big happens, like, there was one of the big glacial bursts or glacial floods that happened while I was there. And I was lucky. My former father-in-law, he was a pilot. I flew over that, and videotaped it. I'll never probably in my life see something else like that again. And here you get to Reykjavik, it's just, stress is way higher. Lots more going on. It's a much larger area, and you end up, doing lots more driving, spending lots more time doing things like that, where, I had years where I think I might have driven my car. I think we had a big year one year, and we may have driven it 700 kilometers or 800 kilometers because we never went anywhere. No. We were always busy with our company. Yeah. So it was just 10 kilometers to work, 10 kilometers home. And once we moved to town, it was 2 kilometers to work, 2 kilometers home.
That's another thing in Iceland. You don't walk. You take your car.
Could it be the cold?
It could be that. Yeah. Could be that.
Or the snow.
Or the snow.
Or the ice.
Or the wind.
Or the
rain. Go in all directions.
Well, and that, over there, you got to remember, that's like, we used to have a joke there that it rains twice a year in Hub. Well, first is from January to June, and second is from July
Yeah.
to December. Because it was never was it calm wind.
No.
Always.
No, that usually doesn't happen around there.
No.
And how about the sunshine thing? Did that hit you hard? The darkness and winters and...
I came in March, so we're at that point coming out of the nastiness.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first summer was weird. I was working on our house, and I got burned like everybody does. I kept, wow, it's still light. I can keep painting.
Yeah.
You know, paint until midnight, paint until 1. What's that? Sun doesn't go down. But it really, the night, the winters, they didn't really get to me. That's just now that that's starting really to get to me. Because I don't remember it being, of course, you got to remember there, of all places, is probably one of the best places for, you know, it's not like in the north of the country where, I don't know, I think Siglufjörð, like they lose the sunshine in the middle of November and it doesn't come back until...
Ísafjörður also?
Yeah, they don't, that's way earlier.
Yeah, I tried moving there once.
Once.
At winter time.
That's rough. But over there, you actually, well, if the weather was good, which was a hard thing, you can actually see the sun.
Yeah.
Here you see the brightness, and if there's no clouds, you see it. But I mean, you could actually see it on a good winter day, and it was like better. Mm-hmm. But
yeah, it's the rainy and cloudy winters like we had now, where it's always cloudy, always misty, rainy,
right.
Snowy,
Hard.
And then you just get a little bit of light, but yeah, it can get you.
Oh yeah. I've been enough in the Northeast and the Northwest of the country that I don't think I could do that.
No, it changes people also. Like
right.
when I lived in Ísafjörður, what I noticed that my sleeping schedule got fucked up. Mm-hmm. Because I moved there to get off drugs. It was a fantastic plan for me and my wife. We were users.
A geographic cure.
Yeah, we were. That was the plan.
Right.
We opened up the phone book and we had Ísafjörður and we decided to move there. And first of all, we called and asked if there was any employment there. And they said, yeah, it's definitely, you can get work here if you want. And so we decided to move. Mm-hmm. Not so much work. They had huge layoff because somebody sold their quota or something when we moved there.
Right.
And so we basically were unemployed there, mm-hmm. and coming down off a big bench and no sunlight. So I did a lot of walking. And when you walked outside maybe 5 o'clock at night, you could see the lights were on in every other house. So it was like the whole fucking town was in a weird sleep cycle.
Right.
Yeah. Good times though.
Oh yeah.
And then you moved to Iceland. And what did you do here when you moved to Reykjavik?
Well, when I came back first, I worked for my friend who owns Tónlistöðin, mm-hmm. and that was just because
That's a music store.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I knew moving back to Iceland that coming here unemployed, not going to fly. So I did that, but that was before I decided to get into what I'm doing now, which is what I was in the States to learn, which was guitar building. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know whether or not I was going to do that, but it was kind of apparent because obviously here you have to either make money or die. Mm-hmm. So once I realized that I was not going to be making what I needed to be making there, it sort of, at first I was doing what I do at night to offset lack of income. Mm-hmm. And after that it was painfully obvious that I needed to get into what I'm doing now because I looked around a little bit. I probably could have found something else, but it's kind of hard if you don't have any kind of special education or whatnot to get yourself into. Also,
Iceland is run on who do you know system.
Right. Right.
Most of my jobs I have had because somebody knew someone, and that's why I was hired.
Yeah, and it's that way everywhere in the world, but here it's even more important if you're going to get into something good. Yeah, if you're going to get into something lucrative, you really have to know somebody. Right, right. I was never in that class though. No. And I even went to interviews with people who I'm certain you know who are, but I was kind of surprised when people were putting, contracts in front of me. And one of them, the guy was really hoping to get me just because he knew I was bilingual.
Mm-hmm.
And he was doing lots of business to the States. And it was import business, and he was real excited to get me to work for him. And I remember when I looked down and I saw the clause that said that at any point in time he could withhold my pay. Just, after what he thought. I was like, I'm done. It's like, no, I can't do that. So, yeah. But I ended up getting into that. Basically, I think I was 18 months at Tonestone or something like that.
Yeah.
And
that really kicked off.
Yeah, it was sort of, I guess there's always been a need for it. Some people who I've known, acquaintances who I've known for quite a while since I've lived here, people have said things to me, can you make a living doing that? And I guess I jokingly answer them and say, define living. It's we all have sort of a different standard there.
Yeah.
But
Definitely.
That's what I do, and it hasn't killed me yet.
No?
It's trying, but it's definitely involved, and I've been extremely grateful. It's weird. Some of the musicians that I knew of once I moved here, it's kind of weird when somebody brings, the instrument that you've seen, on stage, and it's like, I need you to fix this, and be like, okay. And that's a real neat thing. I enjoy that side of it because the trust that, somebody's showing you, and I kind of, sometimes I get home and I'm dead beat, turn on TV and there's somebody, I'm like, hey.
I did that.
Yeah.
That's a nice thing. We met through that thing, actually.
That is correct.
It's funny how that works, because I'm a firm believer in when you meet a person, it's very obvious if something clicks or not. I don't know what it is, but it is definitely something.
It's a fish thing.
Is it a fish thing?
It's a fish thing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Maybe it's that.
No, I've used the same words before too, throughout my life.
Yeah, it's funny because I was basically just coming to you with a guitar I need fixed.
Yeah.
And quite fast we became kind of friends and just talked a lot, and it seemed easy, and just it's funny how that kind of works. I saw a scientific thing the other day, because it goes into like particle science and stuff like that, that we are all on some kind of frequency,
right? And
it's becoming more apparent that there is something real in the sense of that, that you click to people. And this article actually was talking about that the only thing that got in the way of that was language.
Really?
Because through language, you're able to project yourself in a different way than you really are.
Okay.
So before we had much of that, probably the only thing we got going for all the only senses we used was this frequency thing. And they were talking about that somehow, and it really clicked with me, because this has always been my case. I know within half an hour if somebody is going to be a friend of mine or not.
Right.
I don't have to hate them or anything. It's not like that.
No,
it's just apparent that I like that person. I'm going to talk more about it, and it comes easily.
Yeah, I'm very in tune with that. That's been the same. In fact, one of the biggest mistakes I think I make as a person is when that little voice or whatever it is, when you get that vibe, it says, if you don't listen to that, yeah,
it usually mounts up to be correct. The first instinct thing.
Right.
That's what I've found also.
But it's interesting though that you said the thing with the language, because one of the things that I've heard and I've read several times that gets a little interesting. it's specifically dealing with people who are bilingual, and it says that you're not the same person depending on which language you speak. And I've always heard that and thought, because I'm not like, amazing or anything, but I am, for whatever it's worth, bilingual.
Yeah,
definitely. But I've still been trying to see how that can be, because obviously for someone to say that, they're trying to point something out. But I don't know. It was.
I don't maybe can see something in it, because you can be bilingual and be able to talk a language, but to actually convey thoughts and real emotions is a different thing.
Right.
And it takes a different kind of practice.
Right.
How to get there.
Right.
And so it's maybe more superficial in your second language, if I can say it like that. Comes out like that.
And it's all relative, because it's one thing for you to be able to function in the language. It's another thing for you to be able to actually understand it, and the difference between being literate and being fluent.
Yep.
Because I've said it millions of times with English. I feel really bad for people who have to learn it as a second language, because it steals words from everywhere. It changes radically, and the meaning of the word, sometimes it's not even context, it's just inflection.
Yeah.
And the same word can, if it's not a homonym, then it's, somebody's mutated the word, and, that's bad. Okay, that's not a good thing. Oh, but that's bad, and that's a good thing. And that's,
bad shit like this shit is bad.
Yeah. Well, or you've seen the other one about shit and everything. It's like, this shit is complete shit. Yeah. That's just amazing to me.
Yeah, it's funny. It reminds me of that Ismo guy, the comedian guy.
Yeah. Right.
Takes it to a whole different level of funny.
Of course.
Yeah. But do you see yourself living always in Iceland? Are you lacking sun?
Well, it wouldn't be a bad thing, but put it this way: I'm committed to being here as long as I can, for my children. Mm-hmm. But at some point, you look around you, and I'm not getting any younger, mm-hmm. and it is kind of amazing to me to see, and I guess that's sort of my unique viewpoint, in that I've only been here for 30 years, but the changes and things that have happened, I'd like to say that I could be here for ever, but at the rate at which things are going, I don't know how long I can afford it, because it's just
This seems to be a common problem, I think, everywhere.
True, everything's getting more expensive. It's just here it happens exponentially faster.
Yeah. And I think it goes down to that 1% talk about tax havens and stuff like that.
Right.
We're really good at that. We seem to be doing that thing. And I think, I don't know, I think we're in the middle of some kind of change in this situation. I think we're more in that big change thing that we need than we think, because I think we're really in it. And we're at that place where people see it for what it is, and everybody knows what it is. Right. It hasn't always been that way.
There's definitely an awakening going on, but this is also, I think a worldwide thing, because even though I'm talking about it here, it's the same thing back in the States. The poverty gap has expanded.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that, luckily, one of the things that makes me really optimistic living here is the fact that we're only 40,000 people, whatever it is. To me, I see that as a giant positive. Mm-hmm. It means that it's possible for people to make change happen.
Yeah.
When you're 340 million,
it's heavier.
Shit gets weird in a hurry.
Yeah.
But I've always looked at that and said, that's something that gives us hope, or to me, it could be changed. It can be done.
Yeah, I think I'm hopeful that we will see change in our lifetimes, because I think in a lot of ways, just the way the world is going right now, it's going to force us to do a change.
Right.
And I think also when I look around me, more and more people are looking inward instead of
Right.
the race thing.
Right.
I think people are starting to realize that this having more than others and gaining more money and having more things,
Right.
it's getting a bit old. And I think
Right.
people are starting to look inside more. What do I want to do? How do I want to do this life?
Right.
And I think when you're at that point, the system will get shaky pretty fast.
Well, I think the big thing, at least as far as I can see, is you want to see sort of, and this is what's been difficult for me to watch from afar
Yeah.
with the States, you want to see, at least as well as I understand it, a strong middle class.
Yeah.
Because those are the people who keep things functioning. If we're going to look at it from, a social democratic or capitalistic kind of view, but the big thing I think is that people are realizing that it's like one of the changes I've seen here since I came. When I moved here, people were, Icelanders were still willing to work in whatever kind of work, and all of a sudden, it seems like, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago, something like that. All of a sudden it sort of began to be that, no, I don't want to go work in that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to, everybody thought they were going to be a
Be
CEO
somebody.
or some giant job or whatever. And I think people are starting to realize that, it's like my sister even made a joke to me that I hadn't heard at that point in time, but she said, more money, more problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people are starting to see that, that, it's not easy to be one of those people. And we forget that a lot of the people who make, crazy money, it impedes their life,
It definitely does. I've fallen into that trap. I thought that was where I wanted to go at a certain point. And I had a company and I wanted to grow it as big and as fast as I could because I wanted to get there.
Right.
But what I kind of learned on that journey was that all my life was in that.
Right.
You only have a certain amount of bandwidth.
Right.
And if you want to channel that all into that, and
you can do that.
you can do that, and it's possible, but it's going to cost you heavily. And I think the luckiest thing that ever happened to me was that it failed.
Right.
Because then I realized I had nothing.
Right.
Because I had invested all my bandwidth into that.
Right.
And I realized I was neglecting my family, I was
Right.
neglecting myself,
Right.
and all of a sudden I had nothing. And I think that was a very healthy and a rude awakening. And it
Right.
changed the way I conduct my life today.
Yeah.
I try to make really just sharp lines. This is the time I want to spend working.
Right.
And this is the time I want to spend doing something that fulfills me as a person.
Boundaries.
And I really want to do this with my family, and that costs time also.
Mm-hmm.
And I think more and more people are coming to terms with that the race is not, it's a trap.
Yeah, it is. And it's, like you said, it costs, and it's not money.
Yeah.
And that's, that's very sad, because you see all the people who are doing that, and, well, I make jokes about it, but, money can't buy you happiness.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously you have to be able to,
It's a balance thing.
Yeah, it's a balance thing. And that's the thing that bothers me, is when I see, things going on here. Like, I know boo-koodles of grandmas and grandpas that have had to leave because they can't afford to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I get kind of, a little bit frustrated with that, because it shouldn't be that way. It should be possible for those people to,
Yeah, they're the ones that got us here.
Right. Right.
But yeah, I think also it's been fascinating. I mean, I've been taking a little bit of look of what is happening in Australia,
Right.
with the fire thing. And they're outraged with their prime minister now.
Right.
Because he got caught, I think, skimming something. And also he spent his last month when the things was as worst in Australia as they were in the Bahamas vacationing. And I saw a video clip of it today where he was going out on the fields talking to firefighters and family that has lost their houses and stuff like that. And it was hard to watch. Nobody wanted to shake hands with the guy.
Right.
And he kind of forced it. He kind of reached and just, I was like, whoa. And I think this kind of a crisis thing pulls people together. And it becomes more apparent who's not playing with the team, if you know what I mean.
I follow you.
And I think while the world is kind of aiming in that direction into more crisis and life becoming a little harder in many places,
Yeah.
I think that will also have what I'm trying to get at is the tribal thing will kick in.
Sure.
If you're living in a small tribe and somebody's just taking,
Yeah.
that guy's gonna have troubles.
Right.
But that gets diluted when societies get bigger.
Right.
But I think when kind of trouble hits, that will become more of a thing.
Oh yeah, I think so.
So I'm hopeful that through a little bit of difficulty, which I think is very healthy for a human being, your views kind of change on what matters and what does not, and it becomes more apparent that the newest thing is not gonna do it for you.
Right. Or one of the things I was thinking while you were saying that was a saying that I learned. I don't remember when, but it's always stuck with me. That there's two ways for change to happen. One is failure of the previously existing system, and the other is a clearly perceived better way. Unfortunately, humans seem to go by the first one. It has to fail, and then you can see.
I think that's a power thing.
I think so,
Yeah.
but you were talking about the prime minister there, and I was thinking about that. You know, I don't know anybody that I can think of that I can imagine would want to even get into politics today, because I don't know how you can. Those people, you can talk about thick skin, but this is just insane. I mean, you can't do anything. You can't have a history. You can't anything. I don't know how anybody, I mean, it's just.
And I think that is also something that has to change.
Yeah.
Because we want real people.
Oh, of course. Of course.
We don't want perfect poster people.
We need real people.
We need real people that have had real problems and know what they're talking about.
Right. That have lived life.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think if we get to the point where that is seen as a plus instead of a negative.
Right.
And I think also and I think this is something we're doing well in Iceland. You can have a past and be somebody in Iceland.
Right.
You're not ostracized. If you had drug problems and you got through that shit,
Right.
that shit does not follow you. If you're an ex-con in Iceland, you have a way back into society.
Right.
And that is something I've always been proud of in Iceland, because that's what we want. We don't want two societies here.
Yeah. And that's what everybody wants. Everybody wants to be able to, you know, not only forgive others, but to be able to forgive themselves. And that's, you know, that's one of the hardest things to learn.
It is. And that was, I think, my biggest hurdle being clean and stuff like that. That was actually just that, forgiving myself. And it was a hard school to see that, but a good guy pointed out, you have two choices. Either you're going to forgive yourself and try to do better, or you're going to stay the way you are.
Right.
And I think your family would choose the first one.
Right.
And that kind of gave me an out. Okay, this is my options, so this is what I'm going to have to do.
Right.
And I think it's important. If like, say I was living in America, and this is me not knowing, just thinking.
Right.
if I had my past living in America, I think I would hit walls that I don't hit here, job-wise and situations-wise. Would I be right?
You know, in the States, and that's one of the things that's different about there versus here. You can create walls for yourself, but sometimes, like, you know, when I moved back after nearly 12 years of being here, I basically didn't exist as far as, you know, credit and other things are concerned. And that was really weird to see that. But I think you're right in some ways, you know, depending on your history and depending on if you have a, you know, a criminal record or anything like that, it can sort of haunt you. And I've been happy to see how things have been going here because, you know, you've seen all the changes in the financial world here. Mm-hmm. If you go bankrupt, it doesn't have to haunt you. You know, we all make the jokes about it. You go here and it's like, oh, your social security number, that's history. You can't, you're done. You know, you made one mistake and you're dead. Yeah. And the other day, somebody was telling me that you could, you have to, it doesn't happen automatically, but you can actually request and have records purged here, mm-hmm. so that you have a clean, you know. And I think that's just back to the same thing you're talking about. It's, you know, the forgiveness thing. Yeah. You got to be able to do that. And it's one of the things, you know, I've been trying to explain to my children, both for them dealing with themselves as well as interpersonally. Just getting the idea of forgiveness down so that you understand you're doing it for you more than you're doing it for the other person. But so many people don't see that. Yeah. Because if I'm pissed off at you, then who am I hurting? Not you. It's not like you're sitting up going, oh, I wonder if he's angry at me. No, you don't give a fuck.
It's the Gandhi saying thing.
Right, right. And so it's just, you know, it's me. It's messing me up. Yeah. And that's where you got to get to that point. It's a hard fight, though.
It is. And I think I've been kind of digging in my history and just trying to figure out why and where did I go wrong in my youth to go the way I went. And I think I've pinpointed it at the thing that I wasn't allowed to make mistakes. And this was not something other people put on me. This was something I put on myself. Because I grew up with people that were honest and hardworking, and I didn't see the mistakes.
Right.
Everybody has them.
Right.
But my parents weren't open and talking about maybe how they made mistakes and how things worked out from that.
So you kind of set an ideal for yourself.
I set an ideal for myself that wasn't possible to stand under.
Right. An unrealistic.
Yeah. And that kind of dug my grave. Right. Because when I did a mistake, the first thing I wanted to do was cover it up. Nobody was allowed to see that shit. And that's not a good path to go on.
Nope.
And this was one of the hardest things I had to come to terms with when I was getting clean, like 14 years ago, that it's okay to do mistakes.
Yeah. Right.
It's normal.
And see, it's funny that you'd say that because I've got the same problem, but mine was imposed on me. Mm-hmm. My parents were that way, that it was like, no, you can't do that. You're our child.
Yeah.
But see, that in some ways, I think it's probably equally bad, but the problem is, and it's been a weird sort of journey for me as a parent, to be able to get to that point to allow my children to fail. Not that I tried to stop them, mm-hmm. because that was one of the first things, that was knee-jerk reaction stopped me from doing like my parents. Yeah. But getting to the point of saying, instead of somebody says, oh, well, I think I'm going to do this or whatever, and you're like, and you're about to say, no, you can't do that. And it's like, yeah, well, okay, you need to make your best decision. Mm-hmm. And that is difficult, but it's just like, you know, it's just like we see in nature, you know. Yeah. They let the animal goes out and tries, and Maybe he loses a foot. He comes back. That didn't work. It's like, you're gonna have to do better next time.
Yeah.
But that's a strong point.
I took it upon myself because when I got clean, I had 3 kids,
Right.
very small ones, and it kind of fell upon me to do the upbringing thing, which I was totally not ready for, but I had to do my best.
There you go.
I kind of took early on the decision of not hiding my mistakes from my kids.
Right.
Just because I kind of thought it was important to see that you can make mistakes and it doesn't have to define you.
Right.
And I think that's a pretty good lesson to have.
Oh,
because we all fall into traps.
Yeah.
And I also believe that like being a teenager today is a lot tougher than when I was a teenager.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Because the world view is just totally different.
Oh God, yeah.
We have a constant media who's always telling us everything is going to shit. We're going to die. Everything's going to shit.
Right.
There's no point in this. And that's the message when you're at your vulnerable state, when your feelings are going all over the place.
Right.
And to have that also, I think it's really hard.
Oh yeah, because when we were kids, if you had the pen that had 4 different colors,
Yeah.
you owned the world,
Yeah.
You didn't have a phone that, you didn't have,
If you have a Nintendo, you're set. I was there.
Right. And you're, one generation after me, we had Atari.
Yeah. I had that too.
It's like, this is fun. Yeah. But you were talking about that, and I was thinking about a couple of things. My wife sent me one the other day that I enjoy the fact that we always talk about things like that. And she sent me one that she did it on purpose. There's a guy that she listens to that I don't enjoy his stuff. I don't know why he grates me for some odd reason. But the quote he sent was, "You need to raise your children so that they know when not to listen to you." And I read that like 3 times, and I was like, damn it. That's what you want to do. Because you don't want them to be, a little brain dead,
No.
What am I supposed to do? So I think it's good when you get to that point that they actually, it's kind of like, the joke we make in the States with soldiers. You want to raise them to where they're, independent.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to do that. And it's a tough thing to do. You're competing with, when I was a kid, the nasty evil was MTV. It just had happened. God, that'd be a hell of a lot better than today. You're like, wow, if that was all we had to compete with. So that's
MTV. It's funny how that works too. Like social media now is the big evil, apparently. And I think every generation has this thing. And I think it can be a negative, and it can also be a positive thing. I think social media has been a lot about like fronts, what you want other people to see you as.
right.
And I think we will evolve from that.
I hope you're right.
I really think I think it's at its infancy, if you know what I mean.
Well, only thing I'm going to tell you is my daughter was the person who said, "Dad, you have to get on Facebook. Otherwise, I don't think I would be."
Mm-hmm.
And as of late, I've been more looking at it and going, it's like when the internet came around, I thought, this is amazing. We're going to be able to do amazing crap with this. And what did it end up being? It's a mail order fucking catalog.
Yeah.
And it's got some porn, and it's got some, other stuff. And, we can I get lots of information. You can learn a lot.
Yeah.
But it's really weird what it's done, because I can't see, as of late, I keep getting further and further away from, Facebook as an example.
Yeah.
I like the idea of people sharing pictures and seeing stuff and that, but it needs to somehow,
I think it's going that way. Like this podcast thing has become huge, and that's people talking for real about real things.
Disseminating information and feelings and I'm with you there.
I think it's headed that direction more so than even the big news outlets.
Right.
I think people are more getting their information directly from a scientist on a podcast that is in the forefront of his field
Sure.
than just to listen to what the media has to say.
It's definitely possible. That's
So
right.
I think this could be a real breakthrough thing,
Of course.
because it's easy to kind of push ideas that you know are not true when you're doing it in 20-second clips.
Right.
It's fairly easy to do,
Yeah.
but in a 1 or 2 hour talk, you're not getting away with that.
No. Well, and
It's a lot harder to get away with.
it's the thing that I think bothers me with, and I saw a meme yesterday. I'm always worked up with memes, but I saw one the other day that just absolutely hit this on the head. Back in the day, whatever that means, 20 years ago, 30, 40 years ago, whenever, the news told you that something happened and you had to make up your mind what you thought about it.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of like the news tells you what you should think and you have to decide whether it really happened.
Yep.
And that's where, like what you're saying, where we have the ability to go and say, well, now wait a minute. And I've done it with lots of things, I've gone and said, hey, I want to know about this. And if you look, you can find somebody who knows something about something.
Yeah.
And that I think that's where we need to strive for being, because that's the dark places of the internet that I can't deal with, is, the anonymity, the fake names, all of that stuff where you don't know the computers that are doing things that are,
I think that's definitely going to change.
I hope
think
so.
Technology is going to get us through that. I
so.
fairly believe that in not a very distant future, you have a thing like you have a social security number here, and that is kind of your identity, and it follows you. And I can definitely see, not in a very far away future, that you will have the same thing online.
Yeah, to eliminate some of the...
That you just have your thing, it's not hackable, this is your thing, this
Right.
is your front.
Your electronic ID
Yeah.
or something, yeah.
Like an IP number or something like that.
Right.
I can definitely see that happening, because I think we're just in the infancy of this thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I see positive changes, like I said, this podcast thing, this long form talks, this, and I think this is so important that you just open with the shit you've been through,
Right.
because people don't need to be comparing themselves with the fake front you put on social media.
Right.
Compare yourself with something that is real, and then you have to get a little bit real.
Or a lot.
Yeah, and that was the big thing. The reason I decided to start doing this thing, because I have a ugly history, and I'm not ashamed of everybody knowing that now. I had a thing where my friends all knew me and knew where I come from and my family, and I found myself just not that long ago on that place that I really didn't care if just everybody knew. Because I have found out that just by speaking openly about my story, that has helped other people in that situation.
Sure.
And also that I can get locked into just that image thing.
Well, everybody does.
Yeah, but
in Western society, everybody does.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I really want to get away from that.
Well, but you said two things that I'm going to just throw at you for entertainment.
Yeah.
When you say you have an ugly history, I would kind of throw at you that you might want to consider that you have a history.
Yeah.
Because, it's just like when I was working through a lot of things that I had to work through and still working through, when you get to the point where, you're dealing with feelings and whatnot, feelings is kind of like it's not kind of like, it's basically like the weather.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to lie, I'd like to wake up and it be sunshiny and warm tomorrow. It's not going to happen. But the interesting thing is when you just accept that, you know, some days it's going to be nice, some days it's not. It's the same thing with that. And I think, you know, you were talking about the forgiveness thing and whatever. All of the things that have happened in what you call your ugly history is what got you to where you are, and realizing that that all plays together. Because, you know, when you're going through it, it sucks. When you're there and when you're still, you know, it's kind of like, you know, those people that got stuck up at the glacier yesterday. They're just now getting over their event. They don't really know exactly what it did or didn't do to them and everything. You don't see that, you know, hindsight is 20/20. But it is kind of interesting that I think that's what the sort of big positive of what you're talking about here with the internet and whatnot is this will give, you know, I've even run into a lady who, she was giving away her first, I think it was her first book, but she was actually engaging people who got the, you know, the free download, and she does counseling. She's in California. She's like, yeah, we should hook up and talk and see, you know, if we're a fit and maybe we'll, you know, work together. And it kind of caught me off guard. I was like, she was like, why do you think you want this? And I was like, because I want to maybe see if you got any smart ideas or something. I didn't know what to say. And it caught me off guard, but that's, you know, that's where the technology, you know, exceeds our humanity. Because, you know, it does lots of things like that. People can go to school and they don't have to go somewhere. They don't have to, you know, impede their life with some crazy cost of moving somewhere and, you know, ripping up their roots. And they can improve themselves.
And also just, like I see in my oldest kid, Heiðar, he's extremely smart.
Right.
He doesn't fit into the school system.
Right.
He has ADHD. Well, how do you say it?
ADHD.
ADHD.
Or ADD, depending on which one it is.
And he doesn't fit in the school system. He had a hard time going through that.
Well, nobody fits in the school system.
Yeah, but with the internet and with things, he has learned, I think, a great deal more that he could have learned in school on himself.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's a huge thing.
Oh yeah.
Because not everybody are made for doing good in school.
No, and that's what I was hoping that we would get to with the schooling thing is, you know, the perfect classroom is one teacher and one student. When you get to 30 and one, it's just, you know, it's a compromise. Yeah. And hopefully we can find a way to make, you know, both of us have seen with our kids, it's weird that they're, you know, they get iPads. And I'm like, wow. And then I realized, oh, that means that you don't have to look up there at the board. It can be here in front of you. And as long as you can control them from not going on YouTube and doing other...
They have that.
Yeah, I know. Oh, and they have ridiculous control, more control than most parents know about, and we should have it, all of us. But no, that's a definite plus that's hopefully going to be just growing and getting better. Yeah. And then we're talking about that with the school thing. I don't know if you saw 60 Minutes on Sunday. Do you watch that ever?
No, I don't watch a lot of media.
I don't watch that much of it. It just happened to be on, and I saw this, but I saw something that I was really. I'm always looking for ways to find faith in humanity. Yeah. NYU College, the university, the medical school, they have now found a way. They are going to let everyone go tuition free to school, the medical school.
That's cool.
Yeah, and especially when you're talking about, you know, in the States, there are people who are 10, 20 years out from graduating medical school who are still not paid off their... Yeah. But I was amazed to see that, and that's kind of one of the things I was hoping that we would be able to see happen with the internet is that, you know, back to what we were talking about with the work and whatever, the balance thing, you know, that it's interesting. I know people, I obviously would never be able to do that, but I know people who work from home, and if they can't get to work because of weather or whatever, they can just stay at home and be there if they want to. And that's a huge advantage.
It is. It also means that you can be at home when your kids come home from school. You can.
Right.
It fixes a lot of big problems.
Well, it fixes problems. It also does crazy, weird shit that I saw this thing the other day where you can, I don't know how exactly it works, but you got like a camera for your freaking pet. And he can call you at work. And I was like...
Yeah, I saw that shit. It's like a feeding bowl. And he comes to that shit and you can talk.
I mean, but think about it. You don't have to... I wonder what Fido's doing. There he is. And
licking his ass on the kitchen floor.
He's licking his ass on the kitchen floor. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah. I think, or I hope at least, that, and I have a strong feeling about this, that society is going to change a lot in the next years to come. I think I sense it. This thing about huge companies taking all the wealth, putting it in tax havens, not taking it through the tax system, is just coming to an end.
I hope you're right.
But what do I know?
I have always had difficulty with that one because when I was a kid, I still remember how amazing and wonderful I thought, the world was. And the older I get, I'm always surprised by, the dark, ugly things that you see and all that. So I've sort of put that into one little sentence, which is, I love humanity, but sometimes I can't stand people. Which, obviously, it's intentionally sarcastic, but I hope you're right.
Yeah.
I was watching a TV show a couple nights ago. My wife and I really enjoyed it. I actually would recommend that people see it, which I don't know what that says about me, but I'll tell you what it is just so you can get an idea. And it's funny because it's Namibia, which connects us to Iceland again. British show, they took a British family and they moved them to Namibia to live with natives there.
Okay.
It gets weird. They actually duplicated their house out on the plain. I'm not shitting you. They built the damn thing exactly the same, and right outside are their huts and the trees. And I was looking at this and I was going, what the hell? And the first show, we were glued to the screen. And I was laughing my head off because, they drive up in there and here are these, this is, native, I don't remember the name of the tribe, but, this is their life. This is how they live. Mm-hmm. And they get out of the car and they're like, okay, here are the ladies in they wear funky mini skirts and weird headdress and some sort of necklace, and they don't wear anything else. I was just like, oh, this is going to be weird. And they went through this whole thing, and it was so funny. The oldest daughter of the couple, she's like 20-something. The girls come to her first, and they get to come in the house. And it was so weird to see how radically different their perspective of everything was. They showed when the house was being built that the tribal elders were kind of standing around like, what kind of crazy people would go to the second floor or something, who's going to go up there? What's that all about? And I was like, what the hell? And then the girls came in and she was like, okay, you guys want to come in and see what it's like? Yeah? And then they saw the stairs and they're like, what's that? So it's okay. She had to help them walk up the stairs. They were scared. And I was like, stairs? Okay. So they got up there and they were looking around and they was like, look at all these shoes. They're all barefoot. Mm-hmm. She's got shoes for days. I was just like, what the hell? I was like, why do you need all these clothes? What do you do with this? And so they said, okay, fine. In the morning you come with us and we go and get water. They have their own water, their food. Everything's the same as they live in England. And I was just like, God, this is a genius idea. It's absolutely stupid or it's genius. Morning after they go and they have to walk, I don't know how, they said it's 20 minutes. They have to walk to go get water. 2-meter deep hole, and they're throwing buckets of water up, and this girl's like, oh, this is different. And she's trying to learn how to do it. One of the girls, one of the Indian girls is down there, natives, whatever, and she's like, oh, snake. And it's a little tiny thing, but it's poison enough to kill you. She brings it up there and she shows it. The British girl's not, shit in her pants. She doesn't know what to do. Other one, she kills it and says, oh, okay, it's okay. We can keep going now. And I sat there and I watched this. They decided, okay, we're going to take her and we're going to get her to dress like we do. I said, okay, tomorrow you come to us and we're going to do this. She says, oh, okay, I'm really nervous about this. And they said, okay, well, here, we want you to wear, our this, and this is a big deal. They don't do this with anybody. And she was like, no, I can't just let my tits hang out. I can't, that's not going to work. And she refused, and she was freaking out. And the other ladies were like, well, what's wrong with you? She's like, well, she's a little bit heavy. And she's like, well, I don't really like my body. I'm too big and everything. And I don't like my breasts. They're too big. And one of the other girls was like, gosh, I wish mine were this big. And I was like, oh my God. And we sat there. And then he was like, well, you're beautiful. I mean, and she says, no, you see, I've got these little fat things on me. It's like, and to them, being fat is the sign of being, healthy.
Yeah.
And I was just like, we sat there, both of us, and we're watching, and I was like, this is totally a question of perspective.
Yeah.
The tribal, the mother of the king or the highest ranking guy, he came over to the housemaker, and she's showing her, this is the dishwasher, I put this stuff in here. She's like, oh, so you don't have to do anything. You got a lot, and she was like, what do you mean? I have to wash all these clothes and do all this stuff? And then she said, well, if you got another wife for your husband, then you'd have more time. And I was like, the lady was like, what are you talking about, another wife? And they took the house father out, and that was just the most amazing thing ever. He showed him, the first thing he showed him was a metal detector. And they were like, what's this? They found a bullet. They found some sort of a whistle thing, and they were just enamored. They're all over the place looking. This is great, And then they took him to show because they have 2 different water holes, one for the women and another one for the men to take care of the livestock, because for them it's a big deal to keep the cattle alive and everything. And he couldn't figure out how to throw the buckets of water up, and they were just like, I said, oh, you'll get it, you'll figure it out. And it was so weird to see how different the perspective was.
It's also weird to think about how this totally works in that direction.
And you couldn't put them in.
Oh, never.
Never.
We don't have that.
No, we can't.
We don't have that tolerance for difference.
No, we don't. And they would never be able to function. I mean, outside of the fact that it's always hot there, and what would they do in this?
Yeah.
Freeze.
Definitely, yes. But yeah, this has been really fun. And thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I think Bob's your uncle.
Bob's your uncle? Or he's my uncle, or he's somebody's uncle.